This is not just poetry. It means, for example, that a bus with 100 passengers has a right to 100 times more road space than a car with one. It's a democracy at war. You can really see that public good prevails over private interest. Okay, here we are in part of the Porvenir Promenade. This is a 24-kilometer pedestrian and bicycle-only street which networks very low-income neighborhoods to the richest areas of the city. I think it's a revolution in the way urban life works. This kind of high-quality infrastructure for bicycles increases the social status of cyclists. Before we had bicycle ways, low-income people were ashamed of using bicycles. Now, a high-quality protected bicycle way shows that a citizen on a $30 bicycle is equally important to one on a $30,000 car. And here is something interesting. You can see how the pedestrian and bicycle has pavement and the cars are in the mud. So it's a priority for the pedestrian and for the bicycles, and then later sometime we will pay for the cars, but first the pedestrian. So this completely shows respect for human dignity, for everybody, not just for those who have cars, who normally think they are the important ones in developing country cities. Again, this is democracy at work. Buenas tardes, ¿cómo les va?
Okay, so I find that clip particularly interesting as an example. Okay, so like, I love that because, like, remember we talked before last week about like getting solutions and problems. Like, you don't want a solution in search of a problem. You want to identify the problem and then understand and develop like a solution to it, right? So like in this case, I really love the book about subways where he talks about like an urban center changing. That's one of those things that like you have to learn, right? Like you find that out the hard way. You have some city with an incredibly expensive subway line and you find out that it's like not very particularly helpful, right? So like if you put in a subway line, that's a solution in search of a problem, right? That the assumption you're making is a number of things. One, that people prefer subways, that subways are the best way for anyone or low-income folks to get around even. That the urban center of the city is going to be the same over time. Like you have all these number of assumptions, and yet people, you still see it. Like in Toronto, they were having this big fight about, put in a subway, whatever. And it's like, again, that is a solution, right? But you need, like, is that actually solving the right problem? In this case, like I love this solution because the problem that I identified is not necessarily just like, well, transportation is bad, but like, well, what are the sort of like peripheral effects of transportation, right? You have low-income folks not able to get to, when he talks about connecting the wealthy and the poor parts of the city, that's really interesting because like that's sort of the idea of mobility, not just in not a literal sense, but in an economic sense as well. Like connecting folks from the circumstances they're in to the circumstances they might want to be in if they're able to kind of now get a job, doesn't cost a ridiculous amount or take a ridiculous amount of time to get to work, right? And it's also the idea of like these people are not like it's just unrealistic for them to maybe get a car and sort of traverse the horrible system there. And the bus system is really interesting too. That's a really interesting design solution of like, okay, the city's still developing, so like how can we create a flexible system now? And then the idea of like giving them equal road space. So like that's super transformative, not just in a way of people getting from point A to point B. People are starting to feel better about themselves. They're not feeling stigmatized by the culture, and then actually it might motivate them. It might give them some sense of agency. And also, if the bus is actually faster than a car, you might have like higher income folks with lower income folks. And then you sort of have that like, Paul in the pit experience, right? Where you put people in a foxhole together, people who seemingly have competing ideals, competing circumstances, and they're able to understand that, they're able to kind of understand one another. So I think like assumptions are a really interesting idea because it's like a key idea in design, as opposed to like sort of in engineering. Like one of the books that I recommend is Change by Design, which is where the design thinking term comes from. Tim Brown, the author, talks about kind of like how engineering sort of fundamentally is like solve for X, right? Like there's sort of a defined problem, whereas design is like you have a kind of abstract problem that sort of seems simple in nature, but you discover like all these assumptions along the way that you didn't realize you had. So like really simple examples, right? Like this was something recently I thought was like super fascinating assumption. Like we were designing brochures in class, this was obviously like just whatever, quick bunch of squares. and we designed it for these people, and they're like, yeah, we really love it because there's this team of us. They're like, we really love what you guys came up with. It was not this. We really love what you guys came up with, but there's one problem. Like, what? They're like, well, brochure stands are about yay high, and like the graphic and the title on your thing, like, wouldn't clear it when it's put in a rack of brochures, and we learned this the hard way. And that was like, blew my mind, because like, oh my god, that's one of those things you don't realize until you actually go through the process of putting a brochure into a rack of brochures. Like, never when you're designing are you thinking about, not never, you should be, but you're rarely thinking about the context in which something like a design is actually going to be applied. Which is why it's super important to prototype, and super important to get like the lowest fidelity thing out there to validate your assumptions, right? So you talk about like agile, whatever, agile development in software. That's a little different, but it's still the same idea that like you want to get something out the door quickly, because then you can start to validate your ideas and test your assumptions, right? Here's another one very recently. So this is an app movie app me and some of my friends are working on. So super quickly, I don't really have time to like illustrate it well. I just literally took a screenshot of the sketchboard. So basically, like there are two tabs that are shown here. Like it's basically like list of movies you want to watch, list of movies you've watched, right? And so me and my friend Zach were working on this, and we were like, okay, well, what view are we going to use for? And we're like, actually, how can I point with this? There's like a thing you can point with this, right, Carl?
Yeah, you can like draw.
What's your favorite?
Just want to see the top right. There's a
Yeah. Whoa.
Yeah.
All right. What do I use?
The pencil.
Pencil? Screw that. Okay. Okay. Nice. Okay. So if you see, like, here are here like the two active tabs. Like these two belong to the same tab, and these two belong to the same tab, right? So like if you tap on Derek in this view, you get this view, right? So then like, right, you might wonder, well, what happens when you tap one of these two views, right? So we were like, oh, well, we don't need to mock it up, right? We'll just use the exact same view here, right? But like, does anyone see the problem of us not testing this as these ideas and kind of allowing yourself to mentally interpolate the two? Yeah.
Well, I presume if I click on either of those and I go see the movie, like if I click back, like I presumably go back.
Well, it's even simpler than that. Okay, look, we have this filter icon here because this is like the primary screen, right? This is the first screen when you hit this tab, but this one is not, right? Like over here, it is like the third or fourth, right? So you have this to get back, right? And like we're assuming that this view here is going to work, right? But like when you have it nested in all those nav controllers, like then you have things that are like, it just fundamentally doesn't work, right? So it was like I was being lazy and like, oh, we don't even mock up how everything works. And then once you actually build the app, you're like, wait a second, like the icon, like where we were going to keep filtering in the entire product fundamentally doesn't work because this view is sometimes shown in a view hierarchy that is not what I assumed it to be, right? So it's kind of like a nuanced thing, but it's one of those things that like that's why it's super important to not just like let your mind. That's why prototype, especially in software, is super important because if you design a frame and a frame, you're like allowing your mind and other people's mind to like interpolate how does that transition, right? Like here, I'm basically trusting everyone to like understand this is how these two frames are interpolated. Like what actually happens, right? There's like a whole huge territory of space in that in betwixt, right? So assumptions are important, right? I talk about that because is it still up there? Okay. Okay. So assumptions. So planners versus searchers. So someone who assumes a lot, descends from on high, is like fundamentally a planner. So I get this terminology from there's a book called The White Man's Brain, which is very interesting, by a development economist named William Easterly. He used to be like high up in the World Bank, and then he was like disillusioned with it, doesn't believe in development economics anymore. So he like left to write this book, basically like destroying the like Millennium Goal project. And basically like he talks about how basically like $40 trillion, a ridiculous amount of money, trillions of dollars being spent on like development, right? And yet like in aid, so that's in actual aid money over like the past 50 years. And countries that receive aid are not statistically distinguishably better in terms of like all like basically getting them to the people who need them. Because they just send in like ships, like tons of trucks full of this shit, and they don't know how to get it to the people who need it, right? Because there's no actual like support on the ground. So you'll wind up with malaria nets in these storehouses over time, and like months, weeks, years go by, and people don't know what they're for anymore, right? So like they have these situations where, you know, if it's like a local economy that relies heavily on fishing, you might have some folks that they realize, wow, this would be really great fishing nets if we could rewire our nets with these things, but they're coated in insecticides, right? So it's like people are getting sick, right? Because it's all because no one understood how to get nets into the hands of the people that need them, because it was a solution in search of a problem, right? The assumption there is that the problem is that we don't have enough malaria nets, whereas the real problem is like we have no infrastructure in any of these communities to actually get like aid to relief to where it's needed. So now you have people getting sick, and like, you know, children, like whatever, they use them as toys, they use them as blankets, all because like, yeah, people just, there was no like communication, right? So that's like kind of idea of like a searcher is someone who understands the context. And so we would, you know, in design, research calls contextual inquiry, where you hang out with the people you're developing a product or an idea for, and you understand how they work, right? So in the same way, in terms of aid and policy, you're understanding the people you're developing policy and programs for in order to actually serve their needs. And you don't start with the premise of like, I'm a white person with money, I can help. You ask the question, is there anything that I can actually do? So this is a particularly interesting example. So this is a picture when I was in Ethiopia. So like that on the right, that little canister, that's like typically what like water's carried in, like these big motor oil containers or old gas cans, like what water is like carried around in. Now, and that is like with running water, but like in other sort of more village communities, people have to get water. And so if you look at a community that's super impoverished and you diagnose it and you're kind of in a planner mentality, you think, okay, what are the problems of this community? Well, super poor, people are getting sick and dying, and you know, whatever. There's like substandard sanitation, all these things. People are hungry. Okay, so what's the solution? Money, food, right? That's the added relief. So there's relief is like just a sort of assuaging problems. Development is actually creating systems and structures within a community to sort of help. So like, oh, relief, we need money and food. But like, again, that's making a lot of assumptions and not understanding the problem. So this is a really interesting project. These are called a Hippo water container. And this was developed by like a sort of social design firm team, and it was sort of iterating on over time. And basically, like this is a much more efficient way for people to carry more water. So what you have in these communities is what you find is if you figure out ways to get water to a lot of like very like impoverished, you know, rural communities, you totally transform these communities, and that's because you have oftentimes women like daughters or mothers of the family are the ones tasked with getting water every day. Sometimes it's 1 to 3 miles. So literally, and they're carrying these like motor oil containers on their backs. So like you have these like young girls that are just walking to and fro all day getting water while the boys go to school and, you know, dad is whatever, and sometimes mom's doing it too. So what you find is that if you put like a well or a more efficient way to get water in a community, you totally transform it, because now you have the girls who go to school and you know, you have clean water, whatever. But like the effect of the girls going to school is like the most transformative thing on the whole community, because you have an entire, you know, likely like 51% of the community that was not previously educated that are now being educated, coming up with really innovative ideas. And so like when you look at the numbers, it's like ridiculous how when you educate the like female population of a community, it just like the standards of living go way up. And you just wouldn't expect that, right? Or maybe you would, but like you look at a community, you diagnose it, you think money, food. You never think like, let's make a water container, right? But that's the searcher mentality. The searcher mentality is let's understand the community, understand the real systemic problems, and apply this design process, right? The research, ideate, plan, execute, whatever. So this is like this water container, which is obviously pretty self-explanatory. When I was in Ethiopia, I talked to this guy who runs these really interesting programs doing wells. Because wells is a really controversial thing, because that's a classic sort of planner mentality. Like, what do we need to do to now? Like we know that getting water in communities helps them. So, well, you can make these efficient water like containers, or like we have lots of money because we're the West and we're rich. Why don't we build wells? Well, the problem with that is when they'll build a well in community's super happy, and they'll come back a year later with all the wealthy people who funded it to visit it, and maybe it's named their honor, who knows? And the well will be broken, and people will be carrying So it's like, that's literally, it seems like ridiculous, but again, like, that's sort of like, when I first heard that, I was like, that's stupid. Then I realized, like, well, I need to get back in the foxhole and see that, like, this is my kind of culture and mentality, looking at a problem, thinking this is stupid, when in reality, it's just different, right? So the mentality is like, someone else purchases something and installs it, doesn't make it, like, mine, right? Like, if you make it, like, I'm assuming you're gonna maintain it. So in that sense, like, it's also incredibly expensive to import these, like, really, like, synthetic materials and whatever, and build it in these other contexts. So, like, typical well costs between $1,000 and $3,000 to build. So this guy I was talking to, he worked with it, he, like, studied in, like, Chile or something. This guy basically made his way of, like, even from, like, 8 to 120-foot water tables, how to, like, use local materials, essentially, found materials, to create wells. So these wells will cost between $30 and $60 but all use local materials and, like, different ways and different landscapes of how to get right through the water table. So the main thing he brought to the table was the skills and the training in terms of how to teach people to use kind of to build these sort of structures and actually drill into the water table. And the main thing, that was the main costing component. And so he would then go build them and teach people how to build them. And then people would then go to other communities who've been training these, like, native folks as opposed to this guy who's just a Westerner. And then they would actually be able to make money by building these kind of, like, very, like, basic but very effective wells that were also incredibly easily repairable because, if a piece breaks in, like, a really modern well in the middle of nowhere, like, how do you get a spare part there, right? And so the other thing I found was, like, if you built someone even one of these really cheap wells, they wouldn't maintain it. But they tested it, and, like, they kept removing components. So, like, they would charge you for the whole well, and then most of the well, and then some of the well. And they basically, like, one at a time, like, what is the least we could charge them for it, they would still maintain it. So they found that there's a washer in, like, in the actual pump that's made from, because only found materials, more or less, it's from flip-flops. So you cut out a circle in the flip-flop, you cut out a smaller circle, and that's used in the pump. So what they do is they only charge people for the wells for that washer. And that's enough to make people take ownership that it's their well, and they'll take care of it. Right? And this was fascinating to me, right? So that's, again, an idea of, like, even a well is a planner solution to a problem, whereas a searcher solution is, well, do people even need wells? Will they take care of them? And is there a way to build it economically in a sustainable fashion and also promote local business? Because now you have people running businesses building these wells. Now, the problem with all this, and this is a quote from a really good book, an essay, basically on this idea of, he calls it